discussing them enough. When it comes to managing bipolar disorder, it's not one big thing that you do well, it's many little things. And this episode, especially the research for it, has really shown me that doing a lot of little things well garner really big results.
You're listening to Inside Bipolar, a Healthline Media podcast, where we tackle bipolar disorder using real-world examples and the latest research.
Hey everybody, welcome to the podcast. My name is Gabe Howard and I live with bipolar disorder.
And I'm Dr. Nicole Washington, a board-certified psychiatrist.
And we want to start off by thanking everybody for their emails. As longtime listeners know, you can email show@psychcentral.com and you can send anything that you want. That email box is completely open to you. But of course, what we love the most, aside from compliments, are show topics. It really informs the direction that we take this podcast. And Dr. Nicole, one of the emails that we get over and over again is, can you show us how to manage bipolar disorder without using the phrase, take your medication, prescribe a medication, be on medication? Obviously, we want to give the people what they want, but I can imagine that as a psychiatrist, the whole idea of managing bipolar disorder without medication and using science-backed ways to manage bipolar disorder and honoring the contract of not bringing up medication for the rest of the show, you probably want to put a little disclaimer out there.
Not really a disclaimer, Gabe. I am fully aware that when treating bipolar disorder, we are talking about a variety of things. You know, I'm a big fan of the puzzle. Some people's puzzles have more pieces than others. Let's face it, there are some people out there with bipolar disorder. Their medication piece is very large of their puzzle. There are other people where it's a smaller piece because they have so many other components. So I am excited to talk about the other pieces.
All right, so from here on out, we're going to give you a whole bunch of ways to manage bipolar disorder that have nothing to do with medication.
Maybe we say that can be used in addition to whatever it is that you and your Dr. Nicole have established as your plan. So not that have nothing to do with medication, but maybe that can complement your treatment plan very well.
I completely agree with that. Pharmaceuticals and medication, they suck up a lot of energy in the room. And I believe that one of the biggest reasons is because pharmaceuticals have so much money. So this is the last time I'm going to say pharmaceuticals, medication, etc. I'm just going to go right into what I really think is one of, if not the most important way to treat bipolar disorder. And that's a hard stop moment. I think that it is really, in some ways, way more important than the M word that we're not allowed to manage, and that's therapy.
Okay.
But therapy doesn't have a big billion-dollar behemoth behind it to have Super Bowl ads and podcast ads and radio ads. But I really believe that it's impossible to manage bipolar disorder without therapy.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. And I also agree therapy doesn't have the money behind it. But also, we always talk about the marketing of bipolar disorder. And I think we have marketed bipolar disorder as this bigger than life illness, which it can be for a lot of people. I'm not minimizing your experience, but we almost look at it and illnesses like schizophrenia as being not easily touched with therapy. Therapy isn't going to stop you from getting manic. Therapy isn't going to help you if you're manic. Therapy isn't going to do this. But therapy can be extremely helpful for bipolar disorder. And I think that we, in some ways, the treating community, you know, the people who live with bipolar disorder, the mental health community, I think we have all, in some ways, minimized how important therapy can be.
I think to your point, Dr. Nicole, it reminds me of when I used to weigh 550 pounds. I remember, seeing my general practitioner who was like, look, you're super morbidly obese. You are in dangerous levels and you need to lose weight. And I said, well, how am I supposed to do that? And he looked at me and said, well, you need to exercise more and eat less. And I rolled my eyes so hard, the earth fell off its orbit. This was not good advice for me. And I needed a bigger intervention. And I think when a lot of people are introduced to their Dr. Nicole's, their medical care, they're in a very serious crisis. And this idea of, go to therapy and talk about your issues is not good advice. But it doesn't change the fact that as soon as I got help, as soon as I lost the weight, as soon as I had to manage for the rest of my life, eating healthy and moving more, exercising more, became excellent advice. And I think we do a very poor job in bipolar disorder of transitioning to that. When people get their diagnosis, when they have a crisis point, when their family gets involved, when the police are called, when they lose their jobs, become homeless, you're right. Go to therapy and talk it out is really, really bad
Yeah.
advice. But we never
Right.
revisit this when they become more stable and say things to them like, hey, do you want to talk about how the police were called? You were held against your will in a psychiatric hospital. You were diagnosed with a serious illness. You've had trauma. Your family was involved. We never revisit this.
Yeah, it is terrible advice for me to say, you know what, you should consider therapy when you're sitting in front of me manic in the psychiatric hospital, involuntary, awaiting court. That is not the time to bring that up. But you are right. The individual on the other side also starts to think, oh, well, therapy just isn't for me because I have bipolar disorder. No one took the time to say, well, therapy may not be for you when you're in the middle of a mania, but therapy absolutely has a place. And we just need to make sure that we are continuing to follow up and have these checkpoints with people with bipolar disorder to see what their needs are, because their needs do change. And sometimes we've talked about how the system sets us up to not be able to have the relationships that really you need with your doctor, Nicole. The 15-minute visit every 3 months doesn't give you that. And that's where I think those things would be talked about if we had more time. So you have to be proactive and you have to be the one to say, hey, I'm better now. I remember Gabe and Dr. Nicole saying, now might be a time for me to reconsider therapy. Let me ask my Dr. Nicole about that. Let me ask my psychiatrist and see if they can put a referral in. That may be somewhere that you have to take the lead.
Learning your quote unquote bipolar moods so that you can get ahead of them before they become crisis points is its own thing. And it is backed by tons of data that people who can recognize these things coming can take preventative action and can avoid mania, depression, hypersexuality altogether because they do the right things at the right time. But the reason it's still sort of connected to what we've been talking about is because often that's learned in therapy. That's an excellent thing to work out with a psychologist or a counselor or a licensed independent social worker. And therapy adjacent would be like support groups and peer supporters. They can help you learn those. But again, if you can figure out that your house is about to burst into flames and all you have to do is use your little under the kitchen counter fire extinguisher and put it out, this becomes now I got to clean up all this foam versus my house is engulfed in flames and I have to start over. And I really think that that's an excellent example for what we're looking at here with bipolar disorder, because often we only recognize the danger when the house is engulfed in flames.
Mm-hmm. Identifying those things that set you off, those early warning signs. I am always a big fan of that. And again, it's one of those things. I think that patients think that that is my role in their recovery. I do. I think I think that oftentimes people have, and I'm not trying to minimize my role in this thing. I think my role is very important in the management of people's bipolar illness.
Are you afraid that the insurance companies are listening? Like, I think that I'm very important in this.
No,
I don't want to say that it's
no,
all the patient.
I
I play a vital
do.
role. Who are
I
you trying to
I
convince, Dr.
do.
Nicole?
This is me say I am important. I'm not saying, "Oh, the psychiatrist isn't important."
I
I
know
do
what you're
think we're
saying.
important. But I think people have this idea that, "Oh, my psychiatrist is just gonna be the one to do all these things." And if you can if you can absolve us of some of that responsibility, that would be great. And like you said, use your therapist as a place for you, especially early on in your illness, for you to start identifying what are the things that have set me off in previous episodes? What are my tells that I'm getting ready to enter an episode? That is strong work that you can do that can take you so far because this is a lifelong illness.
Along those same lines, the example that I used is weighing 550 pounds and the good advice of eating less and exercising more. And, there's another example with bipolar disorder. We're just not prioritizing exercise and healthy diet and its role in mood stability. The science is very clear. People with bipolar disorder are humans. Hard stop, right? There's not a controversy. People with bipolar disorder aren't some subspecies, some subclass. We are people. And the data is very clear that people do better if they eat a healthy diet and they get at least a modicum of exercise. I'm not talking, you don't need to be an Iron Man. You don't need to be an Iron Woman. You don't need to, start running marathons. But if you can take a 20-minute walk a day, eat some leafy greens, get some water, eat some lean proteins, just have a marginally okay diet. One that makes your mom like groan a little, but she's decided that she's just not going to pick that battle. But what we often find, Dr. Nicole, if we're being honest, people with bipolar disorder eat a lot of convenience foods. They eat a lot of, chips. They eat a lot of delivery. They eat a lot of fast food. They eat a lot of frozen food that you can throw in the oven because cooking is harder. And the healthier you eat, the harder it is to cook. And when you're suffering and when you're having a depression, right, you're not thinking that way. And of course, when you're manic, you're not thinking about consequences. So you're just thinking about easy to access, good, cheap food. So if we're being honest, people with bipolar disorder do better with their bipolar disorder when they eat well and when they exercise because everybody does.
Yeah, that is, not profound, but yes, it's accurate. And I'm glad it's not profound. Like, yeah, you're a person, you're alive, you have a heart, you have lungs, you have all the things that the rest of us have. And I think, again, it's marketing again. I think that we often frame the physical health of people who have illnesses like bipolar disorder as, oh, they're going to have worse health when compared to their non-bipolar peers. And for the exact reasons that you just named. But I think when you hear that stuff enough, it can lead you to the point where you start thinking like, oh, people with bipolar disorder just have crappier health. That's just my lot in life. I'm just gonna not be as healthy. But I don't feel like we continue the conversation. I don't feel like we always continue it into, yes, when you are severely depressed, you may not have the ability to focus on your physical health. You may not be working out. You may not be eating right. When you're manic, all bets are off. We know that. But let's focus on the when you're not in those states, the stable periods. And the longer you're stable, the more you really, really can put the work in on your physical health. You can even prepare for when you're depressed. You can have meals already on deck in the freezer, ready to go for when you get to that point. But I think we have to take the story further. We can't just end it with, oh, if you have bipolar disorder, you're just bound to have poor health. And that just is what it is. Like, that's just it. I don't think that's the end of it.
I think you really hit the nail on the head there, Dr. Nicole. I think that people with bipolar disorder have just accepted that their health is going to be poor. And they've accepted this because that's what they're seeing, that's what they're hearing. You go to support groups and you have a bunch of people who are in crisis. People with bipolar disorder in crisis are not at their peak physical best. And you're like, oh, well, everybody I know with bipolar disorder is not at their peak physical best. No, everybody who you are currently interacting with, including yourself at the moment, is not at your peak physical best because you're in the throes of a bipolar crisis. You're in the throes of being newly diagnosed. You're trying to get help and you haven't focused on that area yet. And what I want to remind people of is, could you imagine if you broke your leg and nobody transitioned into the physical therapy part? Like they put a cast on it and then they were just like, well, you've got a cast now. You broke your leg and you've got a cast. And then they never told you that there was another step and you just wore the cast forever. That would be a problem. Now, number two is if they gave you the cast, they didn't tell you what was next, but then 6 to 8 weeks later, they did take the cast off, but then they didn't bother to tell you that you need to go to physical therapy. You need to rehab that leg, right? So now you're behind the 8 ball and you're trying to figure out what's going on and you don't understand. No, in reality, when you break your leg, they give you the whole treatment plan, right? I didn't even get to the part where they don't give you physical therapy the same day they give you the cast. That's in the future, right? So this is what we've been talking about not transitioning. You're right. The day that you have the crisis of a broken leg is not the day that you have physical therapy. That's 6 to 8 weeks later when the cast comes off. Then they want to strengthen that knee. Then they want you to slowly put weight on that bone. Then they want you to practice pivoting, depending on what bone you break. And if you've never been through physical therapy, they have you do some weird stuff. They have you mimic like getting in and out of a car because that's when you put weight on that bone that you broke potentially, etc. We don't do this with bipolar disorder. We're just like, you have bipolar disorder. Here's one treatment. Everything else, figure out on your own on a podcast somewhere. And that's I guess it's good for us because this podcast can exist. But I'm kind of sad that this is revolutionary information. This idea that there's more to do than just one thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The ball gets dropped in very strange places along the continuum of having bipolar disorder. If you're diagnosed on an inpatient unit, that's a tough time. But nowhere along the way do we have a longitudinal treatment plan for bipolar disorder. Nowhere along the way do we have laid out what are you supposed to look forward to? What can life look like? What happens? I think the outpatient team assumes, oh, we're picking them up. The inpatient team must have had these conversations. The inpatient team is thinking, oh, they're in no shape to have these conversations today. We'll let the outpatient people take care of it. But it really doesn't exist in real life. It just doesn't exist.
And it needs to exist. So having conversations like this are super important. The last thing that I want to say about diet and exercise that the research really clearly shows, it is kind of all over the place. So my advice to you is just to get a blood draw and have your vitamin and mineral levels checked. People with bipolar disorder can be more prone to being deficient in these areas. Now, you could argue it's because of the treatment. You could argue it's because of the bipolar disorder. I think it's irrelevant because it's a relatively simple thing to look into. So Dr. Nicole, do you recommend that people? Well, you probably recommend that all people, as part of a routine physical, have their vitamins and mineral levels checked. But do you think it's more important for people with bipolar disorder?
I think that everyone should have a primary care physician. I think that everyone should see that primary care physician annually for a routine physical exam and lab work. What your routine lab work is going to look like may be different than the next person's routine lab work. That's why you have a primary care physician. There are certain medications. I said the M word. Be mad at me. It's okay.
Oh, you
I
broke the
said it.
rules. You broke. You
I
knew it would
did.
be Dr. Nicole.
I
Doctors think they
did.
can do whatever they want.
Yeah. In this case, I do. I do think I can do. I can't. I just did. um, but there are certain medications that you may be taking that require certain monitoring. There are minerals out there that exist in our bodies that we are not checking on a regular basis unless there is something in your history that makes us want to check them. You need to have that level of relationship with your primary care person.
I blame everything on bipolar disorder. And I'm just being honest. Whenever I feel tired, it's because of bipolar disorder. A good conversation to have with your general practitioner, your Dr. Nicole, your medical team is to say, look, you may all well be right, but I need to have some reassurance that there's nothing else going on here.
And you do have to advocate for yourself. Don't just take your doctor's word blindly, but there has to be some kind of mutual respect there. As a psychiatrist, and I know that lots of psychiatrists feel this way, we know that there are primary care doctors out there because of their unconscious bias about mental illness. You may come in, and if they know you have a history of bipolar disorder, they know you have a history of panic, anxiety, they may completely minimize you telling them, hey, I had increased heart rate and I had chest tightness and I was sweating. And they may go, oh, was it probably one of your panic attacks? But if you know this was different, like I felt different. I normally experience this. This was very different. I am concerned. I would like to evaluate this. You need to be the one to speak up and advocate for yourself. And that's that fine line when I have a PCP who's my primary care doctor that I have a relationship with, then we can have that back and forth because we know each other and we develop this mutual respect for each other. But that's really hard to find if you're just seeing somebody for the first time, or you don't have a relationship with them, or they don't know you. It's difficult to establish, but so worth it.
I could not agree more. Now, I want to stick to, again, that groundbreaking research study that said that people with bipolar disorder are, in fact, people. And one of the ways to manage bipolar disorder and to get ahead of it is sleep hygiene. It's not sexy, it's not exciting, but paying attention to your sleep, having a good sleep hygiene schedule, this can really help control your moods and control the symptoms of bipolar disorder in an extraordinarily profound way.
Yeah. There's not anybody in your household, anybody in your life that can't also benefit from having a great sleep routine. Nobody. Everybody who's breathing can stand to have a very formal sleep routine. So this is one of those easy things, just like diet and exercise. Sometimes the treatments that we're offering you may be counterproductive for other people in the home. There's nobody in your house who can't benefit. So if you have a partner, a long-term partner, there's no one who cannot benefit from sleep. We all need it. So that was not groundbreaking again, Gabe. But I think we will find most of these things are not groundbreaking. We know them. Sometimes we just need to hear them from the right people to be able to take them in and receive them.
People aren't discussing them enough. When it comes to managing bipolar disorder, it's not one big thing that you do well, it's many little things.
And we're back discussing non-pharmaceutical options in the management of bipolar disorder.
And this episode, especially the research for it, has really shown me that doing a lot of little things well garner really big results. And again, while I know that sleep hygiene is not sexy, and while I know that discussing sleep, especially in America, so many people, they have this, well, I pulled an all-nighter, well, I partied all night, well, I can work 40 hours in a row, no problem. Well, I'm not sleeping my life away. We have all these things that diminish sleep. But I gotta tell you,
I'll sleep when I'm dead.
I'll sleep when I'm dead. Yeah. We really do look at sleep as somehow it's a waste of time. But I gotta tell you, forget bipolar disorder for a minute. All of the research that came out that showed that people who don't look their age are also people who get good sleep. Literally, they get their beauty rest. I have been shocked at the number of people who are spending thousands upon thousands of dollars a year on cosmetic procedures, lotions, and everything else. And their doctors are just like, yeah, if you would get one more hour of good rest a night, half of your problems would clear up. I know that's not related to bipolar disorder, but it just shows you how meaningful and impactful sleep is and how it really does permeate every area, including the elasticity of your skin and how many wrinkles you got on your face. I just want to point that out.
Well, I don't agree, Gabe, that we are not talking about it. I think we talk about it a lot, but I think people don't care. And they don't care until you link it to something else. And so if we can link it to beauty or sexual functioning, let me tell you something. Everybody's going to be trying to get a good sleep routine in place, because all you have to do is tell people you'll look younger longer, or you'll perform better in the bedroom. And there you go. Now, all of a sudden, people are going to be coming back to tell me, oh, Dr. Nicole, I heard Gabe talk about how important sleep was. And I don't know, I might throw something at him, because I will say, I have said this to you many a time, yet I guess I didn't say it in an appealing enough way. And let me just say, for the younger people listening, because we know you're out there, you may not care right now about your elasticity and wrinkles and fine lines, but 20 years in the future,
your day's coming. It's coming. It's
Your
coming.
day.
I didn't care when I was first diagnosed with bipolar disorder either. I care now.
your day is, as my grandma would say, just keep getting up in the morning. Just keep getting up in the morning, and you will have the day that you say, oh, I should have listened to Dr. Nicole and Gabe. I should have went to sleep.
I just want to bring up sleep because it does connect to so many things, from our physical health to our mental health to the way that we look. And yet, again, sleep is just often dismissed as not a biological necessity, but as some sort of I don't know. It's just sort of been rebranded as some sort of leisure activity. And I want
Yeah.
to point out that in addition to all of the benefits that we have been discussing, if you have excellent sleep hygiene, it is also a good indicator of your moods. The minute I can't fall asleep at night, I start to think, okay, is mania coming? The minute I am very tired, I start to think, okay, is depression coming? The minute I wake up multiple times in the middle of the night, I think, okay, is this anxiety? Is this panic? What am I stressing over? These are very early warning signs to help me manage bipolar disorder and get ahead of these moods.
And you're right, Gabe. We do tend to think of sleep as this necessary evil. Like, I don't have time to sleep because I have a lot of things I need to get done. But I mean, I guess I'll get a few hours or I'll get a little something. And we shouldn't think of it that way.
Another thing that you can do to help manage bipolar disorder is journaling, is keep a mood diary, is keep a mood journal, is track your symptoms, is keep a gratitude journal. Write down 3 things that you are thankful for and then review it. I think that's an excellent thing to do as part of a bedtime routine. I think journaling to recognizing your moods and your triggers and your patterns, and to really get a great baseline of how you're doing, to spot shifts in your mood that you can get ahead of before they become crises, is also super important.
I do have a lot of people who journal and can go backwards. So we can look back at what were you journaling about the days before you found yourself sinking into this depression? What were you journaling about the days before you found yourself creeping up into that mania or hypomania? And we've been able to help people identify some patterns and some recurring themes for them to say, oh my gosh, like when I start journaling about this particular topic or when I start journaling in this way, that's usually a sign that something's brewing. And that can be so helpful. But sometimes journaling is just a great way to get stuff out. Sometimes journaling is a great way for you to get those things out that you just hold inside and you don't really say to your partner or your loved ones. Because let's face it, people who love you and care about you have no ability to be objective. And sometimes you may have feelings and thoughts that you know would cause World War III in your household if you said it to your partner out loud. Sometimes you have things that you don't want to say because you don't want people looking at you side eyed every time you get together because you shared every little inner thought you have between therapy sessions. This is a great way to get those things out and to process through some stuff.
One of the advantages of writing things down is that you can spot those patterns. If you can spot positive patterns, I think we can all agree that that's going to provide a lift. Oh, I really love my spouse. I'm getting along great at work. I'm doing well with my children. I'm excelling in an area that I want to excel in. And reading back, you can see it. But I want to go negative for a moment. It's also really important that you spot those negative thought patterns. Are you complaining about the same thing every day and realizing that it's not functional? And to tell a quick little story, I no longer keep a mood journal. I did early on in my bipolar journey, but I haven't kept one for years. And recently, in the last couple of months, somebody pulled me aside and said, look, Gabe, we can't talk to you for more than a half an hour without you going off on a rant about X. X is irrelevant. It's just, it was something that was going on in my life that I found a way to tie everything back to X. And people started to notice, and they just couldn't take it anymore because they were influenced by it as well. Well, that was a negative thought pattern that I was unaware that I had, that they had to spot. Now, once they're coming to me, that means some damage has been done. Now, it's not the kind of damage that I can't get over. My friends and family love me, but when I took a long, hard look, I was like, wow, we're just trying to have dinner and Gabe goes off on a tear about X. Yeah, they don't want to hear that. They just want to have dinner. We're trying to go to a movie. So I immediately went to my therapist and started talking about it and working through it in a productive and safe manner. But the number one thing that I did, it doesn't matter how X turned out in Gabe's life. I can now unequivocally say that X is no longer impacting my friends and family. And finally, I also want to add, whenever it does become so overwhelming, because X is an important thing that's going on, I can't just remove it, but I can say, hey, can we take a minute? I just kind of want to process this. And they can say, yeah, we've already gone to the movie. We've already eaten dinner. It's the end of the evening. We're just sitting here, having a nightcap or a cup of coffee or whatever, eating a snack. Yes, Gabe, now is the time that I am willing to delve and I get so much better information and don't overwhelm them. So long story short, identifying your own negative thought patterns and getting ahead of it makes it much easier to resolve than when it's become an entrenched belief that you can't let go of.
Some people don't have loved ones to tell them, hey, you're talking about this particular thing a lot. You're really getting hung up on this particular topic a lot. Sometimes journaling is that for those people. And this is extremely helpful for the person who says, I never know what I want to talk about in therapy. I get to my therapist, they ask me what I want to talk about, they ask me what's going on, and I just really can't come up with anything. This is a great way for you to bring your journal in and to say, man, it looks like I've been journaling a lot about this particular topic. I think that's something we might want to dig into. That is a great way to help guide your therapy also.
Dr. Nicole, I love everything that we've talked about, and I feel like we've covered just an awful lot of ways to manage bipolar disorder without the use of medication, using actual data and science. And remember, you're a board certified psychiatrist, so she legally can't lie to you. I'm just an influencer. I can say whatever I want, but you know that you can trust this. In my story, I talked about not overwhelming my support system because, that's what my friends and family are. They're my support system, but that, of course, assumes that you have one. I think that a lot of people with bipolar disorder, they really don't realize that they need to build a support system, set boundaries with that support system, educate that support system, and decide how that support system is going to help them manage bipolar disorder.
You know, all the things your grandma says, no man's an island, people need people, blah, 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 blah. Who knew? Who knew grandma was telling you things that were backed in science? People do need people. Community is important. And it's important that you have a variety of communities to back you up during these times. You need the people who are going through what you're going through. You need peer support. You need support groups. Sometimes you're dealing with things that only another person who's had a bipolar episode can help you with. Sometimes that's just the reality. Sometimes you need your family, though. Sometimes you need those people who knew Gabe way back when. You need those unconditional love people in your life. Your support group also needs to be your treatment people. You need your Dr. Nicole. You need your therapist. You need those people, your case managers, your social workers, the people that help link you to services when you're down on your luck. You need all of those people in your corner when you're in that space that you need the most support. You need a variety of teams in your corner when you're living with an illness like bipolar disorder.
All right, Dr. Nicole. And with that, I want to kind of do a speed round real quick. In doing research for this episode, I found a couple more things that I think are important to mention. But the research in my mind was not sketchy. It's good, solid research. I just didn't feel that it applied to everybody. I didn't feel that it necessarily applied to people with bipolar disorder, and also some people just don't like it. So in the speed round, the last two that I want to talk about is practicing mindfulness meditation. And I understand that helps a lot of people, but there's also a lot of people that it doesn't help. And especially when it comes to bipolar disorder, this whole idea that you can use mindfulness meditation to calm mania or, elevate depression, it just worried me a little bit to bring it up.
Gabe, you sound like a mindfulness meditation hater right now.
It is not my favorite thing, and I do recognize that I have this bias. This idea of sitting quietly in my own mind has always been extraordinarily painful and difficult for me. So I use techniques that involve, triggering my senses, listening to music, and things like that, and dozens of other ideas. But I do know that it works, just not for me.
Well, okay. So nothing works for everyone.
Right.
There's not any one thing that is for everyone who has bipolar disorder. That just doesn't exist. But we have actual data to support that mindfulness meditation is beneficial.
Yeah, hard stop.
Period.
It is
Point
true.
blank, period.
It is true. Just because
Okay.
Gabe doesn't like it doesn't mean that it's not good, and it's important that we bring it up on the show.
Most of us have a very difficult time sitting quiet and sitting still for any period of time because the world is not wired that way. We have all been conditioned to not be wired that way. Meditation is called a practice for a reason. You have to practice a lot of times to get good at it. But what do? We decide to go download the 15-minute mindfulness meditation when we know that we don't have the capacity to sit still and quiet for longer than a minute. And then we say, oh man, that sucked. I couldn't do it. That was terrible. I hated it. That felt horrible. We didn't even give ourselves a chance. So I would say to you, if you are someone who really wants to try meditation, I would start small. I would start with a minute because sitting still for a minute and trying to clear your mind of all of the muck can be very difficult to do for long periods of time unless it's something that you've been working towards.
The very last one on the list, I haven't saved the best for last. In my mind, I've saved the worst for last because every study that I could find always started with this phrasing. People with bipolar disorder tend to be more creative than the average. People with bipolar disorder tend to gravitate toward the arts and public speaking and painting and drawing. And I do believe, that embracing creativity to manage bipolar symptoms, I believe that it is powerful and it is helpful. But no, bipolar disorder did not give you a backhand gift. I think embracing your creative side, having hobbies, following your passion, finding your joy, getting outside of yourself and creating beauty in the world has real power. I think that's because we're humans. I go back to the landmark study that shows that people with bipolar disorder are human just like everybody else. And Dr. Nicole, I want to say one more thing. I always struggle with this idea that people with bipolar disorder are more creative because then it gives some of that credit for your natural talent to bipolar disorder. And other people don't have to face this. Hi, I have no mental illness whatsoever and I painted this. Oh my God, you are an incredible artist. Hi, I have bipolar disorder and I painted this. Oh my God, the tortured artist. Oh, the window into your soul. Bipolar disorder has made you see such beauty. You're so lucky. And this is why I worry, because there's not actually, and please correct me if I'm wrong, there's not actually a biological link between creativity and bipolar disorder.
There is no defined, researched, identified link between creativity and bipolar disorder. There are smaller studies with very small numbers, which makes them less reliable, that talk about creativity and bipolar illness. My concern is always, what are we talking about when we talk about your creativity? I mean, yes, when a person is manic, yeah, sure, they can come up with some things. The manic brain can come up with some stuff that none of us have ever thought of before, not in a productive way. It doesn't mean it's helpful. It doesn't mean it's useful. And to me, being creative in a way that can be damaging and not helpful, it's not something we should be celebrating or highlighting or bringing into the equation. I am pretty sure that if you weren't sitting here podcasting and being a creative in this space, you'd be podcasting or being a creative about something else. I don't know. Maybe you'd have a podcast for unusually tall, middle-aged men with red hair. I don't know.
You were doing
Maybe
great until you brought up middle age. I was like, unusually tall. All right, I'm feeling good. And then you're like halfway through your life, the impending doom of your
yeah,
expiration is coming.
yeah,
I'm like, what happened?
yeah.
You just triggered every existential crisis I've ever had, just like that.
Escapades of a tall ginger. I don't know. Maybe that's
Escapades of the Tall Ginger coming to iHeartRadio next summer. No, I'm just kidding. It's not. Don't Google that.
But I do think that we sometimes say that, oh, people with bipolar disorder are more creative, but we're really thinking about the times that they were the most unstable. And I don't think that's fair either.
I do believe very strongly that embracing your creativity, creating beauty, and finding things that build joy and put joy into the world will help you manage bipolar symptoms. It will make you happier and more well-grounded. But I want to point out that didn't come from bipolar disorder. I really believe that you might be inspired by bipolar disorder, but your creative talent, your raw talents, the things that led to you creating that beauty, that came from you, and you need to take the credit for it. I mean, there's lots of beautiful poetry about lost loves and people who have died too soon. That doesn't give death credit for giving that person the talent to create that beautiful literature. But those people and those circumstances did lead to the inspiration. And I think we need to table it like that. But for the purposes of this podcast, create, write, paint. Just figure it out. Don't worry about it being marketable. Don't worry about it being good. Go take a painting class. Go write a poem. Go do karaoke. Embracing your creativity to elevate your mood, to find joy, and to give you a goal is beautiful. It is absolutely beautiful. And if bipolar disorder inspires your canvas, if it inspires your song choice, if it inspires your color palette, that's beautiful as well. But recognize that it's inspiration. It did not give you creativity. That's all you. Take the win. You're spectacular.
I don't know how to follow that up. You're spectacular. That's amazing. You are spectacular. And don't be so focused on the product and the quality of it and how good is it? How good is my painting? I can't really dance that well. My singing isn't that good. If it feels good to you, that is what's important.
I believe that is absolutely true. I hope we honored the spirit of the emails that we got asking for ways to manage bipolar disorder and live a better life with bipolar disorder without mentioning medication. I know we brought it up a couple of times, but I think we did a great job of giving people hints and tips to better manage their life. And that absolutely came from your emails. So please continue emailing show@psychcentral.com. Give us those topic ideas. Give us your grows. Give us your glows. Tell us anything you want. I promise, even though we don't answer all of the emails, we absolutely read every single one of them and we answer as many as we can. All right, need a couple of favors. Wherever you downloaded this episode, please follow or subscribe to the show. It is absolutely free and you don't want to miss a thing. Next, recommend the show. Bring it up in a support group. Share your favorite episodes on social media. Send somebody an email. Send somebody a text message. I don't know, if you're willing to do one of those sign spinny things on the side of the road that says, hey, listen to the Inside Bipolar podcast, we are okay with that because sharing the show with the people you know is how we're going to grow. My name is Gabe Howard, and I'm an award-winning public speaker who could be available for your next event. I also wrote a book. It's called Mental Illness as an Asshole and Other Observations. You can get it on Amazon, but you don't want to. You want to go over to my website, gabehoward.com, and buy it there so I can sign and dedicate it for you. That's gabehoward.com.
And I'm Dr. Nicole Washington. You can find me on all social media platforms at Dr. Nicole Psych or on my website, drnicolepsych.com.
And we'll see everybody next time on the Inside Bipolar podcast.
You've been listening to Inside Bipolar from Healthline Media and PsychCentral.com. Have feedback for the show? Email us at show@psychcentral.com. Previous episodes can be found at psychcentral.com/IBP or on your favorite podcast player. Thank you for listening.